Okay, so good morning and welcome to the first session of this new course, Leveraging University Entrepreneurship Ecosystem to Develop Your Entrepreneurial Identity. So, this course is essentially meant for students in second and third year of their program, if you are in a BTech program, or if you are in an MTech and PhD program, then in the initial phases of your study. Because this course is essentially to help you understand what all resources are available on this campus and in the nearby ecosystem, which can help you leverage, which you can leverage to develop your entrepreneurial identity. Right? I am Sankalp Pratap, faculty at the Desai City School of Entrepreneurship. I'll give you a detailed introduction of my own journey a little later at an appropriate time. Let us begin by talking about the resources, because that is the central piece of this lab course. We'll spend some time in the classroom to discuss what we have to do, and then we'll do those activities. Let me check with you if you recognize some of these, if you have got exposed to any of these as you have gone through your first few years on this campus. Have you seen any of these? Have you experienced, participated in any of these events where you have a logo like this, one of these? SIH. You were part of SIH this year? Okay. So, she is referring to the Smart India Hackathon, which is now not only the country's but arguably globally the largest open innovation model, where problems are posted by people who are facing those problems. When I say people, I mean organizations in this case. As of now, mostly public institutions in our country. So, from ministries to Navaratnas, but also private players, like this time Godrej was one of the sponsors. So, they also had some problems to post here. And then it comes to university students like you, only to university students. They are only university students are allowed to participate in Smart India Hackathon, and literally thousands, lakhs rather, of individual students have participated in SIH 2024. This is the 6th edition of SIH. This was the 6th edition of SIH, and IIT Bombay students also participated. And amongst all the IITs and NITs, IIT Bombay had the largest number of winning teams, which was 3. We are trying to improve it, and if you all take note of it and participate this year, we will have more winners. One of the winning teams was led by Mukund, who is in this room as the teaching assistant. So, congratulations again, Mukund, and yeah, so that you recognized SIH. What else have you recognized? Any other IIC? How did you come to know of it? One competition was there, right? So, IIC stands for Institutions Innovation Council. It's a Ministry of Education initiative. We are all part of MOE, right? And go to any HEI today, in all probability, you will find this logo in some of their events. What is MOE trying to do? The MOE is trying to bring innovation and entrepreneurship related activities on a national platform. So, it is trying to encourage various institutions to follow a calendar of activities related to innovation and entrepreneurship. So, they declare a quarterly calendar of activities. Why? Because they feel that if you do it in a particular sequence, students would get exposed to the right inputs, and they would get on to the innovation and entrepreneurship highway. So, and they also know that some institutions are more resourceful than others. So they want you to advertise whatever you are doing so that nearby institutions can come to your campus and participate with you. And that is why this logo, they want to put it so that the moment students see the IIC logo, they know that this is open to any student in the country. Whether they can reach there or not is of course a different thing. Of course, if I do something here in IIT Bombay, somebody from a small town in Andhra cannot reach unless it's a mega event like let's say E-Summit or Tech Fest. If there is a one case study competition, obviously nobody is going to come from 700 kilometers, right? But then there are so many colleges within 10 kilometers of this campus who can come and compete with you and participate with you. So this logo, this is not an IIT Bombay logo, but we put it here because it's an MOE logo, right? So that's the idea, that get students to access resources even if it is not on their campus. Can they access it at some other campus where it is more resourceful, right? Any other logo that you recognize from this? Startup India. How do you recognize it? What have you? Right. 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 So, you know, we often use the term startup very loosely. I have a startup. Mostly people haven't even registered their venture. So it's fair to say that I have a venture. But to say that you have a startup today in India, you require a DPIIT number. And that rule was formulated as part of the flagship program, which is the Startup India program. It has a very well functioning website. You must go through it and see what all you can access. It lays down the rules and the framework through which our country wants to help new ventures. And if you register here and explain what your venture is about, and if there is an innovation component in that venture, then you are going to get a DPIIT unique number. With that number, you will get tax rebates and various other benefits. And as of now in India, it is only in that case that you should call yourself a startup. Otherwise, you are a venture, which is also perfectly fine, right? So, yeah, this is BIRAC. It's from the Department of Biotechnology. They provide funding at every stage of development, particularly for ventures from the biosciences and healthcare space. So students get as much as 50 lakhs to develop their POC, right? So the sense you would be getting, I mean, if you win SIH, Mukund and his team would have got 1 lakh rupees, and of course a certificate from the highest authority in the country. Now this is a large framework, and these are just some of the logos that I have put here. The idea being that a lot is happening in our country and they are spread across different initiatives, and it depends on us to recognize them and leverage them, because that is what they are here for you to leverage. Even for me as a faculty also, there are various opportunities, but a large number of them are focused on the student community particularly. 3 kinds. On your left, the initial stage, where you can go to a tinkering lab, where you can go to a pre-incubation program or education, which is what this classroom is about, right? So a classroom, a tinkering lab, there are pre-incubation programs. For example, the School of Entrepreneurship has a pre-incubation program, Ideas, which you would have heard of. Then student teams can graduate to an incubator. We have SIGN on our campus, one of the foremost and also one of the oldest incubators in our country, where you incorporate your venture and you start developing your go-to-market strategy, because you now want to refine your business model and start earning. And once you cross that stage, you can go to a research park, where you would also have well-established organizations sitting next to you. So you are a young venture and you get talking to large organizations, and they can often be your first customer or your key partner, right? So we also have a research park in our campus now, right? So from tinkering to refining your business model to scaling up, an entire spectrum of resources are available on various campuses, and of course your campus, IIT Bombay, is one of the most resourceful and is trying to tie it up together and help clarify it. This course is also an effort to help communicate, clarify, and help you get onto this value chain. Let us now talk about resources and how various academicians have understood that. And I'll start with Pierre Bourdieu. Any of you, have you heard of Pierre Bourdieu? Not yet. Because he is a sociologist, I am assuming that we didn't have enough time. Also, sociology is not something that we have at school level. So, a Frenchman, a highly prolific sociologist, one of the most prolific, passed away in early 2000s, but his work has stood the test of time and will keep inspiring researchers, including me. So Pierre Bourdieu has talked of many things, but practice theory is one of his major contributions. But what you need to know is that he has talked about forms of capital. So he has explained how you can understand various things that people do or are not able to do through this framework of forms of capital. And there are 4 kinds that he has pointed out. The one which we all are intuitively aware of is the economic capital, right? Financial assets, land, right? That we have a sense of. But then he has talked of 3 other forms of capital, right? Cultural capital, knowledge, that is a form of cultural capital. Knowledge not just what you get in classrooms, but knowledge about, let's say, painting. So if you go to a room where there are 20 paintings, and if you do not know how to admire, how to read, how to interpret those paintings, you are as good as an illiterate person in a classroom. So today if I get a person in this room who doesn't know how to read, who doesn't know how to write, and who does not understand English, which is the language which you are using right now, that person can keep sitting in this room and not get anything. Similarly, if you go to an art gallery in South Bombay, have any of you gone to an art gallery? You have? So you would often have exhibitions by artists, various forms. Now if we do not know how to read it, we can go across and just see, but we won't get much. That is part of cultural capital. Some people know how to read it, how to read paintings. So if I'm standing and there's another person standing next to me and there is a painting, now if I understand something about it, I can mutter something and the person next to me can nod or can speak back and we can have a conversation. But in this room we can have a conversation only when we are able to talk about paintings. Otherwise, that person who is not interested in talking to you, because that person has entered this room to look at paintings. But if I talk to this person about paintings, 10 minutes later, we might be talking to him or her about investing in my fledgling venture. Because for all you know, that person might be a venture capitalist, right?
It's easier for me to leverage my uncle's expertise in the business because we share a connection already.
Right.
So if he was a unknown to me, who I only knew because he had that expertise.
Right. So somebody like your uncle who has a certain expertise, he is not going to be sharing it with everybody in this room, right? But he'll share it obviously with you, right? Familial. almost this form of social network. He's part of your family. But if he's your friend and he knows what your uncle is good at, you might introduce him to your uncle. That is the kind of thing this is referring to more, which is whom do you know and how well. And you again will not introduce all of your so-called friends to your uncle, right? My young daughter, when we shifted here last year, in a few weeks she said, I have 45 friends. We were like, 45 friends? And then over a period of time she understood that she only has 4 friends, right? So we say, you have so many friends, but let that friend ask you about, can you introduce me to your uncle who is on that website and he has this understanding skill set, and we like, uncle phone nahi uthate hain. But good friend, you will say, हाँ करो ना, today evening. So strength. So that also is a capital which can be more or less. So how well you know people, who all do you know and how well, is a measure of your social capital, right? Will they pick up your phone? You can have many phone numbers. You can have many people on your LinkedIn. Will they respond to your message? Right? So often there is a lot of illusion that gets created on social media of who do we know. Social capital is about not only who do you know, but you have to multiply it by how well do you know them. And it is this multiplier which is, in a way, social capital. Again, it will help you get so many other things which can finally lead to economic capital, which we intuitively and functionally understand. Finally, symbolic capital. Can you try and decode what this capital is based on whatever you find written there? And how do you think you have some symbolic capital, and do you think this can work in the way similar to, say, cultural capital? Can you think of an example? Yeah. Hmm. Right. Hmm. Right. Symbolic capital, right? Why is it called symbolic capital? Is that people don't go beyond what you have written. The moment you have written Forbes 30 under 30, now people stop thinking beyond this. What have you done? Whether this is there are only 30 people or are there 3,000 people with this thing? IIT Bombay. Now whether you have got whatever CGPA, whether you have ever studied anything while being in class or you were dozing off, people will get into it, but at the first level, they are like IIT Bombay, Smart India Hackathon winner, Forbes 30 under 30. These are like medals. Once you put these medals on your jacket, it gives you entry into certain rooms, right? People are not asking at that time, they don't want to double click immediately. They'll do, but the first access itself is because you have that badge on your jacket. That is symbolic capital, honors and reputation. That itself gets you in. Once you get into a room, you can do many things, right? But once you are kept out of the room, you can't even show people what you have. So that is symbolic capital. So these are various forms of capital. Of course, there's much more in what Bourdieu has said. You should look it up. He is the foremost theorist in this space. But I just wanted to give you a sense of how people have talked about capital beyond the economic capital that we are all well aware of. Have you come across this scholar, Dr. Saraswati, Professor Saraswati, at the Darden School of Business in the US? She is an Indian origin lady. comes to India once every year, teaches at some places, particularly at IIM Bangalore, and she has talked about a particular concept which you should delve upon, which is effectual entrepreneurship. So she studied serial entrepreneurs. What are serial entrepreneurs? What are serial entrepreneurs? What do you think serial entrepreneurs are? One after the other. So there are many entrepreneurs who create one, make a lot of money, and then they retire. And then there are some who create one, exit, create another, exit, create another. These entrepreneurs are called serial entrepreneurs, one after the other. So she took only serial entrepreneurs as her sample set. And what she found was that there is a pattern in how they are going about identifying opportunities and creating ventures. And that pattern at a very broad level is that they are following the effectual logic as opposed to the causal logic, right? So Professor Saraswati found that serial entrepreneurs, and it is why did she choose serial entrepreneurs? Because it is fair to assume that they have cracked the secret sauce of entrepreneurship, right? So they have done it multiple times, so we can learn from how they are behaving, what they are doing. That's why that sample set. Causal logic is a logic wherein you decide on a goal and then you are like, okay, what do I need to do? My goal is to now take my product to Bangladesh. Okay? So what do I need to do? You need to set up an office in Bangladesh. Okay, fine. It should be a registered entity in Bangladesh. I should have these many employees that I source from Bangladesh. These many can go from India. Right? So goal is decided. I want to sell, let's say, more tires in Bangladesh. I need to do A, B, C, D, E. That's the causal logic. Effectual logic is very different. Effectual logic is, what is it that I have? What is it that I have? If all that I have is, I always have me, right? All of us always have ourselves. And then I have just this one bottle. That's it. There's nothing else that I have. I have me, my brain, and I have this. I will do something where I can create value, which is a combination of me and this. Because as of now, I only have this. If I have certain skill sets, say I can cook good food which my friends have been liking. I'm not a chef, but my friends have always liked the food I have cooked. And now I can possibly use that to create a new venture. Not because I wanted to create a venture related to food, but because I know how to cook and my friends have always told me and praised me and said, my God, you can cook such great food. That is what I have. Effectual logic is about combining things which we already have to do something and create value, as opposed to deciding what I want to do and then looking for resources. Very different, right? This was first talked about by Professor Saraswati. She is one of the foremost scholars of entrepreneurship globally. Delving a little deeper into it, there's a link here which you can go through later when I share the slides with you. There are obviously subcomponents to the effectual logic, but let's look at it. It's from one of her research papers. People following the effectual logic depend on means. What are the means? Who am I? What do I know? And who do I know? Social capital. Because me and this ignores the fact that I also have a social capital, right? So there could be some other people who might have certain other skill sets, which when combined with me and this can create magic, right? So that also is my capital. My social capital is also my capital. My symbolic capital is also my capital. My cultural capital is also my capital, right? So what is it that I already have? And based on that, what can I do? Keep that in your mind. You will keep interacting with people. The more people you interact with, the more you engage with them, you will over a period of time develop what she calls as effectual stakeholder commitment. And if new means come to you, the first box gets wider. It expands the possibilities of what you can do, right? Or in those interactions, if you all finally come to certain ends, then you have to now converge and start doing that based on what together you all have. This is the effectual way of working. Start with what you have, hopefully combine certain other things in the ecosystem, and then move towards ends, as opposed to saying, I want to do this. Who says this? Professor Saraswati. Why does she say so? Because she studied scores of serial entrepreneurs and they behave effectually. They do not behave causally. Right? I have many friends who are in the entrepreneurship domain as founders. One of them is a serial entrepreneur. So he is already on his fourth venture, right? So when he was on his second venture and had already made a lot of money from his first venture, so at that time I was doing my PhD and I went to his office and his venture to collect some data, because we thought it would be useful to collect that data and provide some inputs to him, to his organization. So it was a weekend when I reached there. So he's a rich man, very rich. So we stayed at a very well appointed hotel, which we call as 5-star hotel, right? And we had a good time eating good food, taking a dip in the pool and all these luxuries which come with a 5-star hotel, right? That was Sunday. Monday morning, he goes to his second venture, which he is creating, and he completely changes track. So the same person who was till yesterday staying in a 5-star hotel and spending time with his friends, including me, now becomes this frugal entrepreneur who takes an auto rickshaw. People staying in 5-star hotels don't take an auto rickshaw, right? But serial entrepreneurs know how to do things based on what they have, and they don't cross these lines of trying to set up a new venture using their own huge amount of money. Of course, there will be certain outliers, but that's not how they behave. They are like, okay, this is what me and my co-founders, we together have this stakeholder commitment. We bring this together and we move forward. Right? Because otherwise it then becomes a family business, right? If we start putting our own money, that can be done. Why not? But then it cannot follow the logic which serial entrepreneurs follow. Okay, so that is another take on resources and how to think about them. Now let us go to some of these decision points, action points. These are all related to activation of certain resources. And this is about a father who wants his daughter to maybe get into NASA, become an astronaut, right? So just go through these four actions that the father has taken. Let's say he lives in Powai. So the first one, I think the font is a little small, so I'll read it out for you. It rains, right? We are in Mumbai. It rains. The father is low on resources. So his daughter go to school on an auto rickshaw. But at times you might not get an auto rickshaw when it is raining, because they are also trying to save themselves from rains and from all the log jam. So he uses his cycle to drop his daughter to school during rains. So he always uses cycle. At other times, auto rickshaw. This is one decision he has taken. He has a cycle. I hope you noticed that. Then he was influenced by a neighbor of his. So he was thinking of his daughter, let's say, is in class 9. He was thinking that after class 10, he will enroll his daughter in Kendriya Vidyalaya, IIT Bombay. But his neighbor tells him that, see, uh, you are interested in getting your daughter into engineering. There is this school called Narayana where you can enroll. They also prepare you simultaneously. So KV is very good, but if you go to Narayana, you will also do your CBSE, and they will also prepare you, alternating classrooms or something like that. So he is influenced by his neighbor who he has always been a good neighbor to that neighbor. So the neighbor talks to him about these things, gives him advice. That also is a resource. He has a boss in office, a rich, influential boss, because our man here only has a cycle, but he has a boss, and his boss helps him get a club membership. On his own, he would not have got a club membership, but his boss puts in a word, and the initial large amount that he had to submit, that is waived off. So he gets a club membership where his daughter can play sports like squash, table tennis, and so on. And recently he has decided that he will purchase a color printer, because often his daughter has to go to a nearby printer shop, because in our class assignments nowadays there are so many color printouts that are required. So he decides he can purchase a color printer. So he uses cash in the bank to do that. All these four are deployment of certain kind of resource on that parent's part. You know what the large end objective is, right? That image, that is the image in his mind for his daughter. Which ones of these four are strategic in nature, according to you? Whatever you understand of strategy and being strategic on part of that hopeful father. Which ones? Second one? Okay. Anyone else? Any other bullet point? Might be fourth one. Okay, so let's start. Nobody has talked about one. So let's start with why you think 2 is strategic action. Yeah. Right. Okay. So you're saying that because he wants this as an outcome, so going into a school where they are training to compete for exams where you can get onto the path to become an engineer from a good school and all that is strategic in nature. Okay. Somebody also told about number 3 related to it can help her to get into good colleges. Okay, so it can help her to get into good colleges, and that's why you feel that that also is strategic. The fourth one, you said, hmm. Hmm. Right. So in some other class, people have also talked about number one also being strategic in the way that the father rides a cycle and will ensure that no matter what the congestion, the daughter reaches the Narayana class even during Mumbai rains, and that will help her reach there. So people have talked about all four as being strategic. Now obviously all four are not strategic, not because of anything else, because faculty members often put at least one as not being strategic or whatever is the concept that they are talking about. So what is, when we say something is strategic, and we are talking of strategic resources, because this class is about thinking about resources and finding them out in our vicinity. That's what this course is about. That's why we are talking about strategic resources. So strategy itself, if you have to, of course, there's a very large literature and you can do your PhD in it and all of that. But if you have to think about it at the stage that you are in, you can think about it in this way. So strategy is something which, a strategic decision is something which if you take it today, the results of it will come much later. So if the result of something comes tomorrow or next Monday, it could be very important for you, it could be very useful for you, but it is not strategic. So the output of it, what will happen, will come much later. So there's a time component, that is one. The second is that it can also go horribly wrong. So it can take a spike, the thing that you were imagining, but if it goes wrong, so there is a risk element also involved. So when you are taking a decision and it doesn't create butterflies in your stomach, then the decision you can take and it could be good also, but it is not strategic, because actually it can only go up. So you are not feeling scared, which is fine. We should de-risk, no problem in that. But strategic decisions, time, and you don't know whether it is going to be an upward spike or a downward spike. Of course, you will be aiming for the upward spike. So large change in fortunes of individual, organization, country, city, whatever, depending on the unit that we are talking about, long term can go up and down. Now, which ones of these, if you think of that, which one or which ones you think are strategic? Is the printer one strategic? So based on that, the second one is the one, because once you put your child in a school which is focused on competitive exams, you are going to take away many other things away from that child. Now, if that child doesn't go, why do you think so many suicides happen in Kota? Because you have put the child on that highway that there's no going back, there's no going right, there's no going left. So if somehow that is not working, that child has nothing to hold on to, because that school will not allow you any time possibly to play guitar, read newspapers, right? So it can go up, you can get into whatever, IIT Madras, IIT Delhi, IIT Bombay, but downward also we read about every day, right? The same people in the same classroom, they are committing suicides also. So it can go horribly wrong also, and you will not know it tomorrow, later. So this decision is surely strategic. The others are all functionally very useful for her, right? Okay, so keep that in your mind as we think about resources. Now let's look at this guy. What do you think is happening here? Have you ever had the good opportunity of being in a situation like this? You have been, right? So what do you think is happening based on the expressions that you see on the screen? Yeah. Looks like he had a flat tire and so he doesn't even know how to do it, right? But the image also tells you, gives you some more information that he has, what does he have? He has replacement, he also has tools, right? He has tools to do what is required, but it looks like he doesn't know how to use those tools, right? So he has resources, but just having resources with you or around you does not mean that you will be able to use them. And that is the case with most of us. There are resources around us. One often we don't realize that they are just next door. And at times, even when we know that they're there, we don't know how to use them. So we pass through the system without using things which were meant for us. Because not everything comes with a very neat how to do notice board in front of the room. Somehow it doesn't. That also is one of our attempts here on this campus. But often it's not possible to write everything step by step. Right? You would imagine that a car maker who sells a car of 20 lakhs would at least write this step by step somewhere, but at times they don't. Right? Then you have to go to YouTube to look at how to change the tire. Right? And there the guy first says you must subscribe to my channel and this and that. Right? And then you run out of your data pack and then you are sitting like this, right? So just having resources is not enough. There is another term which explains why somebody with money and machines might be able to win the world and why another person with similar amount of money and similar kind of machines might be a complete failure. Because it's not just resources but also what are called capabilities. So it's not just resources but also capabilities. What are capabilities? Capabilities refer to your ability to string together resources in a meaningful way for your own aims and goals. So that guy, if he knew how to, which one is to go first, what does he have to do next, then he has a capability. Otherwise, he has resources, right? So now I will change what I told you about what this course is about. This course is not just about telling you what the resources are, because end of the day you might feel like that guy on the road. All resources, still not able to do what you hope to do. So this course is about helping you build up capability to use those resources which are all yours, rightfully yours. You are on this campus, the resources are yours. Shared resources, right? Not everything needs to be in our bank for us to think that they are ours, right? But you need to be able to use them, right? So there has to be action. You should be able to move your hands, move your legs, speak, to be able to use them. So this course, step by step, will take you through how to build up those capabilities, how to also spot resources, but how to also build up the capabilities, how to practice a bit so that I get used to, so that after the course ends, and this is only a 3-credit course, so after the course ends, you can, with a little more confidence on your capabilities, move ahead and start using them. Okay? Right? Resources and capabilities are of two kinds, very broadly. Tangible, intangible. Tangible can touch, plant, land, but also licenses and patents which you can't touch, but they are also tangible. They have a certain value, that's why. They are certain value which can be measured. They are for a particular number of years. So these are all very real things with very real effects. Nobody can infringe that. If they infringe, you can file a case. So that is a tangible resource. Intangible is the trust that is there between, say, employees. That is intangible resource. You can't really touch it, you can't hold it, you can't say it's mine. If that trust is built up because of a certain individual or individuals, and those individuals leave your organization, suddenly that trust which you thought was all yours vanishes. Why? Because those 2 people left. The other 18 are there, but they were the ones who were holding that trust together by their actions. So it's so nuanced and so abstract but real that you can't handle it totally yourself. You can't keep it for yourself. Resilience, innovation capability, these are things which are intangible, but they are resources. They have very real outcomes, right? And capability, as we said, is a bundled set of resources which, if you get them to work in a coordinated manner. Strategy scholars have also talked about physical, financial, human, organizational. As you see, different fields qualify resources in so many different ways. Right? I would want you to know about this one theory which comes from strategy, which is called RBV, or the resource-based view. It has 2 assumptions. One, and strategy, so it talks about not individuals but firms, that resources are heterogeneous. There is resource heterogeneity amongst firms. So firms differ in the bundle of resources and capabilities that they possess. And second, some of these resources might not be able to move, you might not be able to imitate it just because you know that it exists. So just because I know that this particular resource is useful and I can see certain things in action, I can't just replicate it. And there can be many reasons of why I can't do it. Interesting conceptualization of how certain things can't be replicated easily. So there's this guy in the US who is a multimillionaire, or billionaire rather, and he's bought a large ranch, and he has earlier been to UK. And as you know, bulk of the people initially came from Europe. That's how USA got its large non-indigenous population, many of them from UK. So obviously they have evolved more, the people in UK, in terms of refinement, in terms of living the high life, right? Europeans are ahead. So this guy, he knows, so he goes to a British lord, and in his house, and he looks at that wonderful grass carpet in his lawn, and he says, I want something like this in my ranch, can you help me? So the British lord, while having tea with this very rich guest, tells him, yeah, why not? But it will require a certain kind of seed, and that's found only in Brazil, and every seed comes for these many thousands of dollars. He says, no problem, I have all the money to buy whatever number of seeds that are required. I'll send my guy to Brazil, he'll get those seeds. Okay. He said, but you require very skilled hands to work with those seeds, and those people are actually found only in Vietnam. So, okay, tell me the address of that village and I'll make an offer to those people and they won't be able to refuse, they'll come and work for me. So, yeah. And this work will need to be done for 200 years. It's only in the 200th cycle of that crop of grass that you will get this field. right? So, resource immobility. So, there are certain things which is not so, and when a firm figures out its competitive advantage based on that, that is when it is very difficult to beat that firm, because you can see what it is doing, but you are not able to replicate it, right? So, resources have certain characteristics. Of course, these have all been articulated about the firm, but coming to something which will also be useful for you at the level of an individual, that you do many activities. Now, unless there is a large iceberg hidden of resources and capabilities which is supporting what you are doing, you are not really in a very strong place. If a large set of resources and capabilities are not backing you, your activities can just flounder. But if this is the case, then even a Titanic hits you, it's the Titanic which will sink, not the iceberg, right? So, remember, your task is to identify resources and build up capabilities and make that your calling card. Once you are able to do that, all your activities will actually be very, very robust. It's not easy to fail once you have a large set of resources and capabilities backing you. Okay. So, today we will talk about, and now with this background about resources, this bit of a primer. So, you have heard about three things. You have heard forms of capital, you have heard effectual logic, you have heard resource based view. Hopefully, you have got some sense that there are resources which you might not be aware of, but even more importantly, you might not have the capabilities, which is what this course is about. So, now we are going to talk about, in all the classes, we are going to talk about at least one component of resource on this campus or around this campus, actually any university campus, which as students you should be aware of, mindful of, and you should know how to go about it, right? So, the first, the professor. So, you would have seen this in your physics textbook, I am assuming. Have you come across this quote? Give me a lever long enough and fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world. Can somebody decode that sentence? What is it referring to? Physics, right? Class 11th surely, but even earlier, moment. Torque. Hmm? Hmm. Right? But you also need a fulcrum, right? So, not just a lever long enough, but also a fulcrum. Otherwise, how would you get that moment? The professor can be that fulcrum for each one of you. So, let us look at the evolution of the professor. The professor has been around for a long time. Thousands of years ago, he was known as the Guru, right? We know about Guru Dronacharya, right? So, the format was a little different, but not very different. But of course, not everybody was able to afford a guru. So, but the kings always used to send their prince, not the princesses, but the prince only. Now, the princesses can also come in, right? So, good evolution. So, but the prince used to go and they used to stay. It was a residential program. The guru's wife, the family, they managed that complex, the hostel kind of thing, and various forms of training were provided by this one guy who was good at many things. He was good at using arms, he was good at philosophy, he was basically he was a guru, he knew almost everything, and the king used to trust them to train their next generation of rulers. So, that was thousands of years ago. Something closer by, in time, and also something of which we have more physical evidence is still left, is the medieval university. How many of you have heard of Nalanda University? You have heard of it? Has anybody gone also by any chance? No? So this is not very far from Patna in Bihar, and 500 AD to around 1200 AD is when it survived. Aryabhatta was possibly, it's not proven, but because he was alive in the same period and in the same region, so it is conjectured that he was one of the director equivalent of the Nalanda University in his time, because he was living in the same region and he was one of the well-known mathematicians, astronomist. Relative motion is what he first talked about. So it is conjectured that he must have been associated, and he was so well renowned that he must have been the highest ranking person in the Nalanda University around 500 AD. Right? So the idea of a residential campus which would have a library, which would have classrooms, students would stay, they would have individual rooms, right? That the Nalanda University, parts of it which have survived and are now protected, existed 1500 years back. But the professors of those time, they were not supposed to, I mean that's how it had evolved, they would know about various subjects. So that's why the polyglot, multiple subjects is what they. Then comes the kind of institute that now you are in, right? IIT Bombay of 1950s, right? We are talking of a time when Hiranandani hasn't come up, so you are able to see those other mountains also. And professors who were very good at teaching and research. Professor Phatak of Computer Science Department, you has grown old but not less in enthusiasm, so you might still find him in certain conferences and he comes to campus. I'm sure he stays nearby, so very revered, executed very large national level projects while at IIT Bombay. So professors who had very large impact on students through their research and teaching prowess. And then when you come to this particular decade, you have the teaching and research focused professors, of course, but what is now getting highlighted and what is useful for our course is that there are certain faculty members whom you could call are entrepreneurially inclined. They may or may not be entrepreneurs themselves, but they are entrepreneurially inclined. They are eager to convert their innovations into actual things which have commercial viability, scaling up possibilities, right? So there are many on our campus. That's the good news for all of us. There are many. I have just taken a few from across the campuses whom I have heard of or I know, because I was earlier at IIT Jodhpur, so there are a few from IIT Jodhpur. We have all heard of Professor Rahul Purwar, isn't it? He is, as of now, he is on a sabbatical from IIT Bombay, leading ImmunoAct. What is ImmunoAct? What does it do? No? Quickly find out. It's worth finding out on your laptop or on your mobile. What is ImmunoAct? I'm a little surprised that you have not heard of Rahul Purwar, Professor Rahul Purwar and ImmunoAct. And while you are at it, you can also check out what does Professor Satya Chakravarti of IIT Madras does. Why is he famous? Yeah, ImmunoAct, what is it? Yeah, so last stages of, I mean, I'm sure they have many other solutions, but critical stages of cancer, and you need to remember ImmunoAct, something which was available at very high cost because it needed to be imported. Now you have ImmunoAct providing you in India the indigenous solution. Agnikul, what is Agnikul? Right, vertical launch and all that. So many have come from Professor Satya's lab, and as I said, these are just representative examples. The two on your right are entrepreneurs themselves because they are founders of startups. Professor Venkat Reddy, who was my colleague at School of Management and Entrepreneurship, he is not yet a founder himself, but he regularly helps students with some seed grant. He invests. He may or may not take equity because he enjoys, right? He enjoys his students creating new things, having conversations with them. So that's what it's meaning. You could be entrepreneurially inclined and that professor is useful for you. Professor Ajay Agarwal, he has his own microelectronics lab, and so many students come to his lab. He helps them, PhD students, master students, bachelor students, get through on their venture ideas with his inputs and facilities on sensors and so on, right? And there's a lot of fame for the recognition now that our society is according, and rightfully so. So last year our president had come to IIT Bombay campus to dedicate ImmunoAct to the nation. That's how big it has become. So Professor Rahul Purwar, his PhD student who is a co-founder, of course it would have been a big day for them as for their collaborators and for the institute and their initial investors, right? Okay, and you can, of course, must be his lab. This is a screen grab from, I think, his LinkedIn post from ImmunoAct. So these are all real people in and around you. These are real stories. Some of the people in his lab might be your hostel mates. Next time you're around, look around for people who work in Professor Rahul Purwar's lab and try and understand the vibe there. Okay. Now, let me share at this time something about myself before we get on to the actual doing, taking ahead what we have heard in this particular session. So this slide is about me. So I grew up in two small towns, one Jamshedpur, the steel town, and other Jharia, which is a coal town, if I may call it so. And I have just listed some of the books which influenced me at that age, starting from Irodov to Shakuntala Devi's book to P.G. Woodhouse. I went to Marine College for my bachelor's in Calcutta, Marine Engineering and Research Institute. Joined a shipping company as engineer at sea. There I got exposure to things which I had earlier not come across. For example, the ABBA group. What is that logo next to ABBA? National Geographic. So on ships, you have lots of time after you have spent 8 hours in the engine room, right? You can't go to shop anywhere. You don't need to shop, right? You can't saunter around other than the deck. So you can sit and read books. It obviously has a library. So it has hordes of National Geographic. So I came across National Geographic. I subscribed it for many years. Now you can't subscribe it anymore because you can't subscribe it anymore. I subscribe. I have many National Geographic in my house also, but I can't do it anymore. Why? The print version is discontinued. When an encyclopedia can get discontinued, right? But obviously, National Geographic is thriving. I, of course, visited many countries, more than 30 countries, because my ship used to take me to those countries. Then I moved to Infosys, where I spent a lot of time developing .exe files, which today you call apps. Then went for my MBA at IIM Calcutta, joined Tata Strategic Management Group, came to Bombay in 2003, and then moved to Calcutta, Jamshedpur within the Tata Group, working on various working in various departments like marketing, strategy, human resources, post-merger integration. Chorus was a big acquisition by Tata Group, continues to be possibly the largest overseas acquisition by an Indian company at over $12 billion. Then I went back for my PhD, and there I got introduced to Bodo. I gave you a sneak peek of what Bodo talks about, and I also got introduced to more interested students on entrepreneurship because of the structure of IITs. So I shifted to IIT Jodhpur and then to IIT Bombay, right? Yeah. Now, there's a reason why I told you details beyond the obvious, because just like every other individual, every professor also has, if you scratch the surface, you will know that there's an individual, and that individual will have certain dreams, certain aspirations, which if you are aware of, part of it is already announced on their research group page. If you go to any professors, particularly engineering department faculty members, they will have a research group. So they'll write in great detail, what do they want to do, how have they been going about it, maybe you are already part of some research groups, right? So they'll articulate that there. At times they might not fully articulate what they have in mind, but that information will be available in the, particularly among their PhD students, because who is closest to the faculty? The PhD students, right? So they are a big source of information about the faculty member, what is the faculty member trying to do, right? Which ones are getting his or her most attention, right? Where are the collaborations building up? And those PhD students are, where are they? They are in their labs, but they are also in the hostels. They might be your next door neighbor, right? So you have very easy access to what the faculty is, what are they doing, what are they dreaming, what are they aspiring, right? So for example, if you were to reach out to my PhD students, we have just started the PhD program at the School of Entrepreneurship. So we have 5 PhD students. So if you reach out to them, you will find that I am particularly interested in child development. They'll tell you, because I must be talking to them about it. That's what faculty members do, no? Over coffee, they talk about things beyond immediate research that they are doing. So then they'll also tell you that I co-founded Hamari Lado. This is a not-for-profit social venture with Premlata, who is also my PhD student, but at IIT Jodhpur. This particular venture has now reached 100 schools in our country. We are targeting 10,000 schools in the next 5 years and 500,000 schools by the time we reach the Viksit Bharat target. This particular program has been co-opted by the Ministry of Women and Child Development under the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao model. and we are now looking for funds to scale it up. We have recently raised some funds as well. Now, they'll also tell you that I am very, as I said, very interested in child development, and that I have been tinkering with for-profit ventures also, that I have had a few failed ventures also. And when you hear that a faculty has had failed ventures, you should feel very happy. Why should you feel very happy if you hear that a faculty has had failed ventures? Experience. And if the faculty has already failed in 2 ventures, then you should be really happy, because now the faculty is about to succeed. So if your interests align with that faculty, you should just jump at that opportunity, because that faculty has already had 2 failures. The third one will be a success. Okay, so faculty is a very, very important resource, because faculty gets research grants, they develop IP, they develop knowledge pieces. Faculty members are in the industry of knowledge creation. So knowledge is a central resource, that iceberg. So now you see that activity, if it is even on its own at times it can survive, but if it has a strong hidden piece, that is when it is very, very robust. And that is why a venture with an IP, for example, will find it easier to get funding, isn't it? But you need not always have an IP. Strong knowledge base developed which has not been converted to IP can also be that iceberg. And where is that iceberg here on campus? In various labs, under the command of various faculty members, with various PhD students, masters working with them. So that part of the iceberg is already there in this campus in so many places. You need to combine that with that visible activity, right? And that is why I chose to bring the professor as the first component, professor and his or her lab as the first component that you should take note of very actively, right? So we will have an exercise on this. Why the book Shoe Dog? Right, the other book. Good question. So Shoe Dog book should be easier to understand. Why? Because it is such a dramatic story of how, I think this is partly because if you read that book, the story of Nike, you will find how the founder relied so much on the expertise of a certain individual. So we only know about Phil Knight, but if you read Shoe Dog, you will know who was behind, who was providing him the knowledge base of how feet work, how do runners succeed at the level of Olympics. That is the co-founder. So it's there for that reason. So good that you asked. And the other one is helps you understand how the state, the government of various countries, how that is one of the biggest investors in innovation and entrepreneurship. We often think that it's venture capitalists, the angel investors, but it's the government of India, for example, which is investing in innovation, isn't it? So that particular book, I'll give you the reference, tells you about, gives you that perspective, that do not ignore the state, do not ignore their programs, because it is through their programs that the initial stage, the stage where that iceberg is being built, the IP is being created, that is funded by, and that is such a risky funding because you don't know where it will go. Once you already have an app, so to say, it's easier to take the market risk, but the technological risk is borne by, often mostly by governments. Private entities do not like to bear that risk usually. So these were the influences. Okay,